Lately there's been a lot of information coming out of Digital Foundry, and they're talking about, the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5. These are things that are key on people's minds thinking about next generation, just how will they perform. And you know what? I've not been a huge fan of Digital Foundry for a long time, but I will say, a lot of their technical stuff is pretty accurate, and I feel like a lot of people blame them for, console wars or whatever. You don't need to blame them for that stuff, because that stuff's going to exist independently, and it existed independently even before they were around. So kind of is a weird thing to sort of pin on them specifically. They're just kind of doing a job telling you what's what in terms of performance and things like that, so you can't really blame them for that. With that being said, they absolutely destroyed a lot of Xbox fanboys' hopes and dreams, and I'm going to take a little bit of pleasure in doing this video. Trust me, it's going to be a good one. What's up, everybody? Crapgamer here with Crapgamer Reviews, back with another video. Thank you so much for checking it out. Please like, share, subscribe. I would appreciate that. It helps out the channel, and it means a lot to me personally. A lot of people ask, how can I support a small channel like yours, CG? Well, you know what you could do? The easiest thing you can do is just a simple like. It goes a long way. You can also share it out, subscribe, consider subscribing if you haven't already done so, and hit the bell so you're notified of everything as soon as it drops. You might be wondering, what's this guy all about? He's loud, and he's boisterous, and he's, unscripted. Well, that's what I'm all about. I'm a passionate gamer, just an average gamer, talking my opinion, learning this stuff as I go along, and hopefully having some fun, and hopefully you guys are having some fun too. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So anyway, the interesting thing is there's a lot of Xbox fanboys that realistically think, hey, the Xbox Series X is this huge beast of a thing. It's going to be, performing better with ray tracing than a 2880 Ti, and we had the Hop Chips conference, and everybody was like, oh man, this thing's a beast, and it's so much better than the Xbox Series X. Here's the thing, than the PS5. Here's the thing, the Xbox Series X is a more powerful console by a small margin over the PlayStation 5. You know how this current gen, right? Basically, the PS4 was almost off-the-shelf parts, while Microsoft went and did a lot of customization for the Xbox One. Whether for better or for worse, they did a lot of customization for theirs, and, it ended up not really working out too well. I think the Xbox One X, which also had a lot of customizations from Microsoft, was realistically something more or less that showcased what could be done by Microsoft, and they did a pretty good job with it. With that being said, going into next generation, they took an opposite kind of approach where a lot of their stuff is very clearly kind of off-the-shelf parts. So Digital Foundry was covering them, basically Digital Foundry saying, a lot of Xbox fans think that the Xbox Series X is performing better than, better with ray tracing than a 2080 Ti, and they nonchalantly said, people that say that don't know what they're talking about. And so I think that pretty much kind of sums up exactly what you would want to know about that situation, because again, I'm not saying that the Xbox Series X is weak or that it's not capable of doing some things. I'm just saying it definitely looks like it's not as powerful as a lot of people on that Xbox side are trying to say, and it's not doing the things that they're actually kind of trying to convey to people. So this might upset some Xbox fanboys, but the Xbox Series X, according to them, is pretty much a PC GPU with some minor tweaks, unlike that of the PlayStation 5, which is obviously heavily customized from the ground up, and we're going to have to wait and see till we know a little bit more than that. We're waiting for the breakdowns of the PlayStation 5, of course, because that's where we'll get a lot of the key information and things like that. But so they might have RDNA 2 implemented in the Xbox Series X, which is they do, and the PlayStation 5 has RDNA 2, but it's more custom, right? And they strip some things out to put some extra things in, and it looks like they might even put in some RDNA 3 aspects into the customizations on the PlayStation 5, which would be a phenomenal thing if you think about it, okay? Because these consoles have been in the making for years, and it's clear that they all had a direction they wanted to go with, where for the first time in a long time, these next generation consoles are going to be ahead of where PCs are. The last time that happened was Xbox 360, PS3 era, when those were basically outdoing the current PCs of the time, which is pretty interesting if you think about it, because when you think about PCs, you really think, hey, these things have pretty much unlimited power, and that is true, right? It is unlimited power for PCs if you're willing to put the money into it. If you're not, then I think that's a little bit of a different situation. If you're not really willing to put the money into it and to do that, then you won't have one. So basically what Digital Foundry's saying is, hey, this thing isn't as good as what a lot of the Xbox fans are saying, but they actually were talking about the hot chips presentation and the way that it costs in the semiconductor industry are looking somewhat challenging, require innovation in the processor design. The outlook is bleak in some respects, but optimistic in others. The good news is that according to Microsoft, Moore's Law is not dead. Transistor density is still improving, and comparing Series X with the vintage 2013 Xbox One Silicon throws up some remarkable comparisons. First of all, in terms of physical size, the Xbox Series X processor is actually smaller than the Xbox One, and transistor count is just 7 years, have ballooned from 4.8 billion to 15.4 billion, a 3.2 times multiplier. GPU compute power has risen from 1.3 teraflops to 12.2, a 9.3 times improvement. Even the comparisons up against 2017's Xbox One X look good, a 2 times 3 multiplier on transistor and 2 times boost to compute. So basically, they're talking about scalability, and the landscape has kind of changed since the Xbox One X's processor was smaller than the original Xbox Ones, but more expensive to produce, and the cost has increased still further in the transition with the new one. So basically, a lot of people are saying that the SoC or the of the Xbox Series X is actually more expensive than that of the Xbox One X. So when you think about that, okay, and you think about, well, what does that mean? Well, there's a couple things that it could mean, and I think I've covered this a little bit. It could mean that they're going to take a bigger loss on the Xbox Series X and sell it for $4.99. It's not going to be cheaper than $4.99. I can tell you that right now. There's no way, because this thing costs more money than that to make, and they're not going to take a huge loss. And if they were, they certainly wouldn't have created a Series S, which looks 100% like it's happening. They wouldn't have created that if there was some kind of chance that they could beat Sony's price right out of the gate. So we know that they can't beat Sony's price right out of the gate. We also know that the Series S is going to be announced at some point. Now, whether or not that launches at the same time, that's a different question. That's a different story, and we'll have to see how that works out. But I do feel like what Microsoft is doing is trying to set people's expectations in check. That, hey, this thing is going to be quite expensive, and what Digital Foundry was able to kind of break down was the cost of this thing is going to be pretty high level stuff. Right, so they also was talking about the 3D audio, which made there's a lot of marketing about it. So Sony makes a really big pitch for the revolution of 3D audio with the PlayStation 5 with the Tempest engine, with hundreds of audio sources and things like that. Microsoft essentially made the same pitch with its HRTF support, and that the Tempest engine has. Microsoft hasn't made any specific promises about mapping 3D audio to the individual specific, but then again, Sony hasn't really mentioned much about that either. So what you're going to have is two consoles that are going to probably toe the line pretty similarly, and we'll have to wait and see exactly how these things fold out. And again, that's probably where Digital Foundry will come in to play. So why is this good news for PlayStation? So a lot of people think that ray tracing is the big pitch for next generation because Microsoft is talking ray tracing a lot, right? Ray tracing this, ray tracing that. The truth of the matter is, ray tracing is cool, but like I mentioned the other day, it's something that a lot of developers are not even on board with, right? So a lot of developers aren't interested in ray tracing. A lot of developers aren't super fascinated with using different aspects that they're already not using now, right? So their lighting can look good as it is. You can do different tricks and things like that, and it's not taxing on the systems. Yes, DLSS is a thing, and it should help out. But this means that for all the hype that Microsoft is hyping with ray tracing in the Xbox Series X, it looks like the PlayStation 5 is the one implementing ray tracing and doing ray tracing at an alarming rate on their games. Like literally every game they've announced seems like it has some form of ray tracing, and I think that bodes extremely well for going into next generation, because their games had already looked far superior to the Xbox exclusives on the Xbox One X. So I can imagine, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, the Series X at 12 T-flops or whatever is just going to be this monster, and it is, but you also have to have an engine that can run the monster, and that would be the games. And do they have the games that are going to really do that? Like, so far we've seen Halo, and it didn't look great or too promising. Again, that's still supporting old school stuff, but that's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with and decide to either change down the road or you know, sooner rather than later. So I really do think that Microsoft is kind of screwed, because they want this whole consumer friendly route, and at the end of the day, I just don't think it's super consumer friendly to you know, have a console that's expensive and not have any kind of like AAAs to take advantage of it. So again, that's really nothing new per Microsoft, but that would be interesting to see like how this sort of plays out at the end of the day. This is pretty good news, because Sony's utilizing ray tracing, and they may not do native 4K on the stuff that they do, but you know, thanks to DLSS, doing 1440p 60 frames with ray tracing, to me, is the key optimization point for next generation. I'd love to see that, and it sounds like Sony's doing that and giving us all these options, where it looks like Microsoft developers don't seem as interested, and this thing isn't as capable as a lot of Xbox fanboys were leading you on to believe. So I will link this in the description so you guys can all check it out and let me know what you think. Thank you very kindly to anyone who spent time out today to check out one of my videos. Thank you so much. Please like, share, subscribe. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, my friends. Rack 'em up. Game on. Game on. Crapgamer out.
Unscripted.